Hey y'all, welcome to the Coyote Trapping School Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Pope. Trying things a little bit different this go round. We've got an interview this episode with Stephen Vantassel. He's the wildlife control consultant, wildlifecontrolconsultant.com. And I heard about Stephen, heard him through a podcast that he does, kind of co-hosts. It's called the Pest Geek Podcast. And it's, I guess obviously not so obviously centered around pest control, but he does a Living the Wildlife segment that is centered around wildlife and wildlife control operations and things like that. And so I thought I reached out to Stephen to see if he would come on a podcast and give us give us a little bit of his experience and his insights and a little bit about the National Wildlife Control Operators Association, NUCOA, as he was a founding member of that organization. So this is going to be split up into two podcasts, two episodes, just because trappers like to talk and, we get carried away. And so an hour and a half long conversation. So we're going to bust it up into two episodes. But I think if you listen, you'll get a lot out of this. He keys in on a lot of the reasons why I'm doing this series about, starting and running a nuisance trapping business is just because, just to get trappers to realize and recognize what we have to offer and get paid for it and charge for it accordingly. So, but aside from that, I'm recording this actually off my computer. So I did this Skype call with Stephen through my computer, and I got to thinking, hey, this might be a little bit easier way than recording on my video camera. As what I've been trying to work out. Some of y'all have raised the issue that there's a slight hum in the background, and my audio is not always just perfect. And I actually use a lapel mic, and so I haven't figured out what was going on with that. But I think that my camera, I'll give you a little behind the scenes action here. So you can see my camera is set up because the first shed is also everything other shed, and there's not a whole lot of room. But my camera is set up on a chest freezer beside another freezer, and so. What I realized or didn't realize to start with is apparently the microphone on the camera continues to record even though there's another microphone plugged in. So the microphone on the camera is picking up the hum of the freezers, which I definitely want to keep running. And so just trying this to see if this works a little bit better. Give me some feedback on the audio from this as well. And we'll see how it goes. So this is part one of the episode with Stephen Vantassel. I'll give you all of his contact information in the notes below. He's got several books available. I actually just ordered one from him about the Wildlife Control Operator's Handbook, I think is what I ordered. But, got some books that outlines a lot of the stuff that we talked about, contracts and different things. And so definitely a valuable set of interviews that I think you can get a lot out of. Before we get into the interview, of course, we got to thank our sponsors, Cots Bros Lures. Those guys are staying on top of the coronavirus situation, which we are all locked down in right now. And so they have got a special, if you're not on their email list, be sure to get on their email list. I just got this email yesterday from Kellen, and they are running a special since everybody's locked down, watching TV and reading books, 25% off of books and DVDs through April 30th. Use code STAYSAFE at checkout. And they've thrown in an additional coupon code of 13% off everything else on the site except traps. And that's just use the discount code 13 at checkout. Now, to get both discounts, you got to use both codes at checkout. But that's Stay Safe gets 25% off on books and DVDs. 13 gets 13% off everything else except traps. So that's a screaming deal. They've got a lot of good books and DVDs. And I may have to go on there and see about ordering a few more, just because there's a lot of good information. And, this kind of being our downtime anyway for trapping season and trying to prep for next season, it's a good time to be learning and improving your situation. So go check out, support Cots Bros, and let them know we sent you here from the Coyote Trapping School Podcast. Also, I've been doing some work in the fur shed, leather shed, pumping out some leather products. So we've got some a handful of the Roper wallets beaver tail roper wallets, handmade Georgia caught beaver tails, bifold wallets, and got a few front pockets here. This is kind of the traditional one that I've been making. Did a kind of this is a veg tan, just kind of a lighter, a different color, just testing things out. And then got a little special. This is actually a snapping turtle. The way the snapping turtle skin is, it's hard to do much with it because of the way it's shaped and kind of a V. And so it fit pretty well for this. I just tried some different things out. So, and then also put together some keychains, beaver tail keychains with some brass hardware, and then this is a electric blue raccoon. So if you need some beaver tail items, or if you've got your own beaver tails, I've been getting a lot of requests. I get all of my beaver tails tanned at Specialty Leather Products in Boone, Iowa. You can go to their website, just Google them, Specialty Leather Products. They have a color chart of the colors that they can dye your tails in once they get tanned. And then, if you want to try sending them to me, or if you want to try, I'm going to try to put up a video of making, one of these front pocket wallets. These are super simple, super easy to make, as long as you've got a few tools that are easy to hand sew. So put up a video of that. Just if you want to try making it on your own, get after it. If you're interested in getting your tail tan and sending it to me and having me make you one, let me know, and I'd be happy to talk about that with you. I've got some other things. I've just ordered some other leather to try to utilize with some of my tan furs that I got now. So I'm kind of excited about that. I'll leave you hanging on that a little bit, but I got an idea in mind. We'll see how much traction we get there. But anyway, that wraps us up. We'll get right into the episode with Stephen Vantassel. I appreciate y'all listening. Appreciate y'all staying safe through this whole crazy coronavirus business that we're doing. Hope you're taking advantage of this time to prep for this coming trapping season, or work on your nuisance trapping business if that's what you're interested in, that's what you're working on. So leave me some comments with any questions you've got or ideas, and be sure to like and subscribe. And hey, y'all be safe out there. Hit up Koch Bros and get you some discount on some trapping supplies, and we'll catch you next time. All right, so today we're joined by Stephen Vantassel. And I first ran across Stephen on the Pest Geek Podcast, and he's a wildlife control consultant.com. And so I talked to him about getting here on the podcast and talking a little bit about, what he does and his background. And then maybe a little bit, he's involved heavily with NUCOA, the Nuisance Wildlife Control Operators Association. And so just kind of get his perspective and working through this series on starting and growing a nuisance wildlife business. So Stephen, welcome, and give us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me. So yeah, you certainly did your homework. So about myself, well, I used to run a wildlife removal service company. That was the name of the company, actually, Wildlife Removal Service Inc. in Springfield, Massachusetts. I did that for about 5 years full-time, but I was working part-time prior to that. And then I sold my company and then worked for the new company which was Pioneer Wildlife Control at the time, for about a year or so after that. So I've got field experience within the industry. I was one of the first, if not the first, problem animal control agent in Massachusetts. Then I went into education for a little while, and then ultimately got hired by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and I was their project coordinator for wildlife damage management, and I ran the Internet Center for Wildlife Damage Management, which was a website clearinghouse of all things wildlife damage, and I did that for almost 10 years. Now I'm in Montana, and my day job is I work for the Montana Department of Agriculture as their vertebrate pest specialist. Just make sure we put our disclaimers here. I am not representing the Montana Department of Agriculture right now, so if you're angry with me, you're angry with me, not the department. I'm not speaking for the department. All the disclaimers that I need to say, assume that they've been said. So that's what you have to do when you're in government work. But my job there is I run the I44 program for private applicators, and I write publications, and then I also provide advice for producers and homeowners on how to handle wildlife conflicts. I am heavily involved in National Wildlife Control Operators Association. I am a founding member, meaning I was in the room when the organization was developed. That happened in New Jersey at one of the wildlife control technology meetings back in the day. I think that was 1999, I believe. And that was formed back then, and so I've been a member ever since.
Good enough. So that's interesting that you're working with the I44 program. So how
it's cool. Yeah.
big is that program in Montana? I think that's
not big at all. I would love to get it bigger. I have a publication coming out from the Vertebrate Pest Conference. I gave a talk out there. I wish it was larger. Unfortunately, it's not. You have to be careful using it because of the endangered species or threatened species. And so if you have grizzly bears in your area, you can't use it. If you have wolves in your area, you can't use it. And so both of those species remove a sizable chunk of Montana territory, which is certainly unfortunate. I was not a happy camper when grizzly bears were not delisted. If you want to see anti-science folks, it goes beyond so-called climate change. It goes to a lot of people that call themselves scientists who believe that we don't have enough grizzly bears. We do. It's amazing to me how we can know so much about climate, but we can't seem to count grizzly bears. So I tell that to biologists regularly, and some of them just laugh out loud. And so if you don't think politics is part of all this, I have a bridge to sell you in New York City. It's a bargain.
Absolutely. So on that topic, not politics, but the M44, what's the difference between an M44 and the Gitter guns?
Well, one's firearms. It used to be a 38 caliber, but that's long gone now. So because actually in some cases, when it fired off, it could actually blow a hole through the coyote's mouth. So, because people think blanks are safe. Blanks are not safe. You can actually die from a blank if you get close enough. I mean,
right.
What was it? Bruce Lee actually. Bruce Lee's son got killed with a blank because the wadding that comes out, that's coming out at a tremendous force, right? So. Sure. But you can have that was ended. It was also a safety issue for the applicator as well. You have that powder coming out at a very high velocity. So it was that was removed, and now it's just a spring-loaded trigger. So it fires a pin into the sodium cyanide powder, and then that causes it to spray up into the coyote's mouth. So It's much safer. I know of one individual, not from our state, who misses the old coyote getter. He thought they were more reliable, and he's a pretty. I would be hard pressed to question his judgment, and he may be right. I've never had any personal experience with the coyote getter because that was well before my time. They've been gone for a long time, but I doubt that it's significantly different.
Right.
Now, with some of the work that's been done, they had issues with the powder back in the day where it would sometimes cake up and things like that. But I think a lot of those types of issues are done. I mean, it's a highly effective tool. So if I have, as much as I love trapping, it's far more specific than a foothold is.
Sure.
Or a snare, or a cable restraint. So it's ironic where people are so-called worried about the environment and worried about non-target species and, bycatch and all this kind of stuff, but they hate M44s. So never underestimate the hypocrisy in the public. I mean, it's truly, what it really is that people are opposed to M44s because they want to let their dogs roam free.
Right.
And that's really what it is.
Yep.
And we need to call it what it is. There are a lot of urbanites in the world who think that it's in the Constitution that they must allow their dogs roam free on private ground and public ground. And that's a law. It's a law in their imagination, but politics is never about the truth. It's always about power.
Yeah, that's right. I've had people comment on my videos of that thing. I'm setting traps on all I trap on is private ground,
Yeah.
and they'll bring up, what if my dog gets it, or what if you catch a dog? Well,
Yeah.
there's
Well,
no dog supposed to be here. I have
that's right.
permission, and nobody else
Yes.
does.
And
So
I do hope the trapping community addresses that, because this idea, and it's beyond the dog hunters. I mean, the dog hunters are, the raccoon hunters or pheasant hunters. Uh, it's not about hunting dogs. This is about people who think the outdoors is a recreation area, and that they have the right to have that recreation area year round, 365, and they don't have to share it with people that set devices. And that's really what this is. This is a urban, rural, yuppie versus agriculture. It's that type of conflict that's occurring.
yep.
So it's sad.
So going back to your early days when you were in Massachusetts,
Yeah.
how did you get started in the wildlife control industry?
Well, how did I get started? I wanted to become a trapper, and unfortunately, Massachusetts is the third most densely populated state in the country, so there's not a lot of ground available. So I thought, well, people have trouble with wildlife, so maybe this is the way I should go. Why couldn't I do that? And so that's kind of how I got started into it. So I asked the state, and they said, well, we're looking to start this program. I was too young at the time. They said, wait a little while. And then I contacted them, I think the following year, and they said, yeah, we'll give you the license. No test, no nothing. It was just gave me the problem animal control permit. You have to have the trapping license, so it's a double level license. So you have the trapping license, trap tag number, and then you'd have the problem animal control permit over that.
Gotcha.
So, and that's kind of how it started. So, I mean, there was no training, there was no literature on it. You basically learned as you went, and you tried to take things that you were reading in magazines and apply it. And then finally, you had an event in Kentucky. It was called the Wildlife. Gosh, what was that called? The Wildlife Control Conference in Kentucky. I'm not getting the name right, but this was back in probably 94, 95 or something. And that happened, I think, 1 or 2 years, and I was able to go down and attend one of those. And then I think a year or so later, Rob Erickson started his wildlife control technology seminar. And then ADC magazine started. And then Wildlife Control Technology magazine started a couple of years after that. So, and once that started to take off, I mean, that once those institutions, I guess that's the only way you can talk about it, you had a standardized training event with a publication. Once that kind of came to the fore, things started to take off. And also states were beginning to license people to do this sort of work, because the states were having budget cuts after the 70s and then the 80s. And then they were looking for a way to shed some of that work. And so before, you had game wardens doing a lot of that stuff, and they were getting sick of it. And so finally that kind of started the whole privatization. And we still have a long way to go. I mean, we really need better licensing. We need better training. Wildlife departments are loath to really get behind this, because frankly, everything's deer and pheasants, right? I mean, that's the only thing that exists. And I appreciate that. I mean, they got to make a living too, but they're not seeing what this industry actually is. And there are ways that they can do this. Otherwise, I think they should just give it over to departments of ag and let us handle it, because we know, because they handle pest control now, they have regular trainings. I mean, look at the industry of the pest control. I mean, it's not only bigger than us, because there's always called trophic levels. There's always going to be more insects than there are vertebrates, right? Animals with a spine. So they're always going to be that, but they're also bigger because they're regulated. You know, there's a tendency among a lot of trappers. Unfortunately, they kind of have this quasi-libertarian strain to them, and they don't understand that what the government regulates, it protects. And so, and people say, well, if they don't believe me, I'll just throw a word out: alcohol. Okay? You want to talk about death in America? Alcohol. You want to talk about ER visits? Alcohol. You want to talk about criminal violence? Alcohol. You want to talk about sexual stupidity? Alcohol. So if you're talking about a social tragedy in our culture, alcohol. We haven't even gotten to marijuana and the other drugs, right? So so why is it that despite all the car accidents, all the wife beatings, all the stupid mistakes, all the home violence, not only the health problems and the stupid decisions, hold my beer, why is it not banned? Well, because the government regulates it.
Right.
No, you'll have somebody call into you and they'll say, oh, what was it called? The prohibition didn't work. Actually, it did work. It dropped alcoholism in the United States dramatically. If you're talking about, did it work in terms of stopping everyone from drinking? No, it did not.
Right.
And I'm not calling for the banning of alcohol. I'm trying to give an illustration as to why alcohol is so protected. Where if you're wondering why we don't get love sometimes, it's because we're not a regulated industry.
Right.
Right. To the extent in the community, in the states that have regulated wildlife control operators, those guys are making money. And we're not talking about $25 to pick up a raccoon.
Right.
Okay. A lot of trappers, and I have a publication out there on this, and that is a lot of people think, well, I used to trap raccoons and I got $8 for the pelt, and someone's willing to pay me $25. I'm rich. No, you're not rich. You've actually endangered yourself, because now you're charging for activity, and now you're getting into a commercial agreement. Once money exchanges hands, now you're dealing a business. Now we're talking about taxes, workman's comp, liability. What happens when you're driving your truck and you don't have commercial insurance and you hit somebody and it's your fault? You weren't just simply going around as Joe Citizen. You were XYZ Wildlife Control. I'm not trying to I hope no one has XYZ. Well, I'm just trying to use that as an illustration. XYZ Wildlife Control, and that person finds out you were a business, your insurance company could say, we're not backing you on this. You were operating as a business without business insurance on your vehicle.
Right.
Okay. So we haven't even, I've talked to people and they're like, oh, we don't use contracts. Everything's word of mouth. That is insane. That's insane. Because everything's honky-dory until something goes wrong.
Right.
And so when I give conversations, when I give presentations, I remind people, look, I'm from Massachusetts. We sue people just because they're rich. That's what we do. I mean, that's what we do in America, right? If you have money, I'm going to fall on your sidewalk and I'm going to sue you. You didn't do anything wrong. Well, it doesn't matter. I'm going to sue you because I'm going to get money around you. And that's what we do. And so if you don't think people are going to do that to your business, or that something's going to go wrong, even when it's not your fault, it doesn't matter, because we're obligated to protect the idiot. So I'm going to throw a word out here. It's called, an attractive nuisance. So why do we put fences around our pools? Well, because we don't want children to fall into the pool and drown, right? That's right. It's reasonable. But the reason why we have to do that is because the pool is attractive to a child to play with.
Yeah.
Do you think a trap with a raccoon in it, and they just watched a cartoon from Disney, Rocky the Raccoon, you don't think the kid is going to look at that trap and say, you know what, I just saw that on a cartoon. Let me go play with Rocky the Raccoon. It was so fun. Now the kid gets scratched. The kid gets bit. The kid, who knows? Maybe he didn't even touch it. Now the mother's screaming at you, saying that her child was injured. Now you're talking about rabies shots. That's, depending where you go, that could be as high as $10,000. So this is why, and if people are saying, well, you're trying to scare me. Yes, I'm trying to scare you on this podcast. I want you to be afraid. I want you to get the liability insurance that you need. I want you to start charging a real wage for yourself. You have a skill that's valuable. Stop lowering your value. A lot of trappers, I think, do not respect themselves enough to realize the skills that they have. They have a skill that a lot of people don't have. You say, well, it's not that hard. It's not about hard. It's about you can do things that other people can't do. And one of the things, this was something that Rob Erickson really spoke when I listened to him speak one time, and it just sort of hit me like a ton of, it just struck me and like, yes, you're right, Rob. It was, you do things to protect other people's emotions.
Yeah.
So I tell people we're undertakers. We do what you can't do. We deal with killing animals because you can't handle it. Not because it's rocket science. It's not rocket science. But it is something a lot of people can't do. They can't sit there and stare at a raccoon and drown it or shoot it or put it through a conibear or through a carbon dioxide chamber. They can't do it. And so a lot of people, we can shelter them from those emotions. So
Sure.
We're undertakers in that regard. It's the same way why we hire people to take care of our dead loved ones. It's not that we couldn't do it per se, but years ago, everyone took care of their own family. You went out
Right.
back 40, you dug a ditch, and there you go. Your loved one went into the ground. Now we hire it out. Now part of that's because of sanitation reasons and things like that. But even if we didn't have those issues, a lot of us would still hire someone else to do it.
Right.
Why? Because it's too painful to put your loved one in a box and then close it up. So that's what we're doing as well. So you not only have that emotional element, you also have the disease factor, you also have the skill factor, you also have the issue of equipment and the speed, and then plus, why would a lot of people hire people to cut their grass? Is it hard to cut grass? No. But
No.
why do they do it? Because if I'm a lawyer and I'm making $400 an hour, do I really want to be spending 5 hours of my life trying to trap a raccoon? Or I can call XYZ Wildlife Control. They can come out and do it, maybe charge me $400. And so from my perspective, it would be I lost an hour of my wages.
Right.
Right. So that is where I want trappers to understand that, yes, you're making money in this business, or you feel you're making money in this business, but you're not thinking about all the liabilities that are involved in this business. So let me take it one step further. So let's take the liability and insurance off the table. Let's just say it's a non-factor. The other issue that a lot of people, when they start their own businesses, they feel that they're wealthy because they don't understand that they brought assets into the business that haven't been accounted for. For example, your truck. So you already own your truck, or you're making payments in the truck, whatever. So you have your truck, you use your truck for the business. So someone pays you, let's just say $50 for that raccoon, okay? And you traveled 10 miles to get that raccoon. Well, that's 10 miles out at what, 54 cents a mile is it now?
Right.
And 10 miles back at 54 cents a mile. Why is the government giving you 54 cents a mile? Because the government realizes that you're doing wear and tear on that vehicle. You have insurance in the vehicle. You ultimately have to replace that vehicle.
Sure.
And so what happens, this is why a lot of people who start their businesses end up going out of business in 3 or 4 years. Part of that is because they realize, oh my gosh, I never put enough money aside to replace my equipment. And then they get hit with a $30,000 bill to buy a new truck, and that's probably cheap nowadays. If you're buying a full-size vehicle, I saw some that were, I was like, oh my gosh, $80,000 for that? For really? I'm just stunned. You have to replace your vehicle. And so they don't realize that they feel rich in their cash because they haven't accounted for all the expenses that are coming down the road,
Right.
that they weren't putting money aside to take care of that. So this is where a lot of people get burned. And so that's why I tell people, well, look, they say, well, what should I charge to do my business? And I say, well, your first task is going to be, what do you want to earn?
Yep.
What do you want to earn for an hour? And I said, just give me a number. What do you want to make an hour in terms of your business? And they'll say, well, we'll say I want to make $25 an hour. Okay, that's certainly not gouging anybody. That seems to be a fair wage. So you're going to have to double that. So your billable rate is going to have to be at least $50 an hour. Well, how do I estimate what a squirrel job is going to cost? Okay, well, you're going to need to then evaluate what is your service area? How far are you going to travel to do work for clients? What's your service area? And time it out. I recommend 20 to 30 minutes radius, whatever that is. Pull a map out, do it on Google Earth, whatever. Find out what that 30-minute radius. You can certainly go farther, but you're going to have to charge a premium for that. For that kind of distance. So you're going to have to factor in how many miles is that going to be? And you're basically going to lose a little bit on some jobs, make a little more on other jobs, because you're trying to systematize this so that overall you're making money. And that's going to be, so how long is that going to take you? Well, I'm going to have to charge, if it's going to be a half an hour out, half an hour back, that's $50 right there, plus my mileage, add that on. And then I got to figure out how much time am I going to spend on the scene to do my inspection and to put the traps down. So that's your initial setup fee. Then you have to determine what's going to be your visit fee, or you're charging a flat rate for the whole thing. How many trips do you think you're going to be making to that location to finish the job? And that's how you calculate it out. And it is what it is. They say, well, if the customers won't pay that, then you have to ask yourself the question, are you going to really be into a business, or is this going to be a hobby?
Right.
And so this is what's happened. A lot of people, they've kind of fallen in love with the activity, and they're not thinking clearly about their finances. First of all, no self-employment's worth a marriage. Okay. Now, if you hate your spouse, then yeah, work yourself to death, and you will trash your marriage, and she'll get 50%. Then it'll be over with. Okay. You want to get poverty in a hurry. That's one way to do it. Right. I don't recommend that. But because the fact of the matter is, in the early stages of our industry, a lot of guys would have done better working at McDonald's than getting into business. So you have to evaluate your location. Do you have a clientele that can sustain your business? Now, I'm talking about full time. A lot of guys do part-time work, and there's nothing wrong with that. But again, you need to be charging a fee appropriate to what your needs are as a business owner. You've got to figure that out. And so you don't want to be working a job and then doing more work and making less money.
Right.
So I had a guy tell me once, and it was really quite valuable. He says, if I want to learn how to trap beaver, I want to talk to a guy who traps 1,000 beaver. But if I want to learn how to make money, I want to talk to the guy who made $1 million off of one beaver. So the question that a lot of wildlife control operators, and this is a problem for wildlife control operators as well, and that is sometimes they think they think that price is the issue with their clients. And for some clients it is. But for many clients, it's not about price. It's the issue is do they feel that you are bringing enough value to justify that price?
Right.
So this is why image matters. Your uniform, how you present yourself, how you talk. Do you have a truck that is decent? It looks clean. It looks professional. You have paperwork. You're trying to put forth a professional image because people want to have, they don't know us from a hole in the wall. They want to have confidence that they made a right decision in hiring you. So that it's in trappers, we tend to be just task oriented, get the job done, but you have to learn the interpersonal skills. And that's something I struggle with. I'm an ISTJ, for those of you who knows Myers-Briggs, right? So I'm an ISTJ guy. And so, and I also think I have a little bit of Asperger's. And so I have trouble with some of those interpersonal, I hate small talk. I hate it. Okay. So I wasn't as good of a salesman as I should have been. Right. And I think that if I had better skills in that area, I would have done better in my business. I mean, if I knew then what I know now, I probably really could have made a go of it. I mean, a real go of it. I mean, not just making money as I was doing, but making real money. Sure. But I didn't have a mentor at the time. So especially if you have family members who have skills to help you, like if you have someone who's handy in carpentry, the money is in the repairs, folks.
Right.
I could teach a lot of people how to trap animals. It's the repairs where the money is made, because you can't find carpenters to do these small jobs. They're not interested. But if you learn the metal bending and you learn how to make that repair look like it never happened, you could charge a premium for those things. And now you're spending more time at that job and less time with windshield time. Sure. So there's a lot of opportunities out there for people that want to treat it as a business. If you love your hobby, treat it as a hobby. If you want to do a part-time business, do it as a part-time business. But be very clear that you're in this to make money, and it's expensive to be self-employed. If it was easy, everyone would do it, but it's not easy. Look what's happening in our country now with the quarantining. A lot of small businesses are getting crushed because they don't have $1 million sitting in the bank for them to just sit back and have a vacation. I mean, a lot of your restaurants are getting hammered in this sort of type of thing. They need foot traffic. Right. So you have to be thinking about, are you going to be able to retire? Because this is a physically demanding job. So a lot of guys, when they hit their 50s, the joints aren't working the way they used to. Oh, I used to be able to climb in attics and do all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but were you protecting your knees? Were you wearing your respirator? Were you protecting yourself from the zoonotics? Oh, I had one guy yelling at me one time, I'm third generation trapper. I don't need gloves. We're all fine. Okay, you're all okay. But, I've seen it seems like a lot of trappers don't live long.
Yeah.
Okay. And if that's your goal, to be dead by 65, well, I guess God bless you. I mean, you'll probably achieve it. But this is a dangerous business, right? You're climbing ladders. We've had people in our industry die falling off of ladders. We've had people get seriously injured falling off ladders. This is serious stuff. So you should be getting paid for that danger element. Not all of it's ground trapping. You're in an attic. You might be on a lift. You're maybe doing bat work, whatever the case may be. But there's danger in this business, and there are diseases. A lot of things we don't know. I contracted something when I was doing I think it came from a mouse job I did in Connecticut. Can't prove it because, again, I was one of those early guys, right? We didn't know a lot of the things that we should be afraid of. And I caught something, and it felt like I was, this was in my 30s, and I thought I just exhausted. I could only work a few hours a day. I was exhausted. And I went to the doctor. He did the bacteria analysis on me. That turned up negative. He did a mono spot. Maybe I had mono. That was negative. And we couldn't figure out what it was. My liver enzymes were off the chart. And a couple of months later, I recovered. We never did figure out what it was. And I was talking to my doctor, and I said, well, I work with wildlife. Oh, yeah, I forgot. Now, you may think that's a diss against my doctor. It's not really, because he's not trained to keep thinking, oh, Stephen Vantassel worked with wildlife. When we get sick, we often think we're sick because it's the flu or it's a cold or I just got a bug. We have to be thinking about, could it be that maybe when you crawled through that attic and you were, in a hurry and you didn't wear your respirator and you didn't wear your Tyvek suit or you weren't wearing gloves, and maybe that's what you caught. And a lot of guys, I see guys picking up animals with their bare hands and they're skinning with their bare hands. Folks, this is not wise. It's not wise at all. We need to be, it's not plutonium, but we need to be careful. Animals carry diseases that can affect us. And you may say, well, I've done this for 20 years. That's right. You may have played the lottery for 20 years too and lost.
Right.
But this might be a lottery you might win. And so we don't understand that sometimes our immune system fights stuff off. Sometimes our immune system may get lowered and all of a sudden we're contracting something that would be normal. The point is that I don't want to create paranoia, but I want to give greater justification that the skills you bring for your client are valuable. Your time is valuable. You're literally selling your life to make money. Make sure that it's worth it to you, given the risks that you're encumbering and the skill that you're bringing to bear.
Right.
Take that seriously, And so, we would welcome. We want more people in the industry. We want support. My love is helping people become more successful in their businesses. So that's certainly what our association's involved with. And I'm just a member. I'm no longer on the board of NUCOA. So my term ended in February. So, but the association's a great place to be. We would welcome you in. It's a great place to learn. If you want to check us out, come on to our Facebook page. You don't have to be a member to join the Facebook page. We have a members only page that you have to be a member for. But we also have our public page. We have over 1,000 people there. And a lot of exchanging information is available, and we'd love to have you come to one of our training events. You don't have to be a member to come to some of our training events. We just offered some online recently because of all the travel that's been stopped with this COVID-19 virus thing. So there's plenty of opportunities. If you don't want to do NUCOA, I've got training materials that I'm selling. I have books available. For those of you that still read books, that would be awesome, given my book sales. Not many people are reading, but there's certainly some of those out there as well. So I think I'll stop there unless you have a follow-up, and otherwise we can go down to another subject or wherever you want to go from there.
Well, that leads us right into NUCOA, and that's one organization that I've not just kind of heard about from the outskirts. I've always been involved, and I always encourage people to be involved in our local trappers associations from a fur trapper perspective. But I've really in the last year or so taken more of a look at NUCOA and looking at some of the expo. I think the expo is going to be in Florida next year.
That is the plan. Yes. So we have never had an expo in Florida.
And so that's I was looking at that this year, but it was in Vegas, if I remember correctly.
That's correct. Yeah.
And just that the travel and all didn't work out. But just looking at the trainings and everything that's offered, especially for somebody that's just getting into the industry, it looked like a super valuable place to be.
Yeah, if you're fresh to the industry, it's gonna be like drinking from a fire hose, and so you are gonna come away buzzing. So there's going to be so much information there, and that's a good thing. But here's what NUCOA does. And so people say, well, what am I paying for my membership? So let's talk about that a little bit. One of the things you're paying for your membership is the community that you're going to be involved with. So it does give you access to NUCOA-based insurance. We have our own insurance. You have to be a full member of NUCOA to get access to this insurance. And so it's not all liability insurance is equal.
Sure.
Because our insurance is based on doing wildlife control work. You can get a rider to do pest control, which would be more pesticides, but it has greater flexibility because a lot of liability insurance is really based on the pest control model rather than the wildlife control model. So, for example, you may say, well, what's the difference? Well, we're not dealing with a termiticide where we're pumping, a barrier, a toxic barrier down below the soil of a building to stop termites. So
Right.
that's going to stay there for 30 years, right? We don't have some of those liabilities that the pest control industry has. We have different liabilities, but some of those liabilities have a huge cost because of the environmental aspects to it. When you put a toxicant into the ground or a barrier or repellent into the ground, that's going to be there a while. There's going to be some longer term issues. So our insurance is designed for people that are doing wildlife control, dealing with traps, uh, dealing with shooting. That's how many insurances protect you for shooting. So
Right.
so those are the types of and they understands if your ladder falls over and goes through a plate glass window, that's expensive, right? So, or your foot comes through the ceiling of someone's attic, that can be a little pricey, right? So those are the types of things you're trying to protect you for. That's that one advantage. You also have access, of course, to our training. The training you get a lower price because you're a member as opposed to a non-member. And also you're supporting an industry that's going to be lobbying for you. And so we've had situations where people wanted NUCOA to come in and do lobbying in the state, and we're like, well, who are you? Well, I'm a wildlife control operator. Well, are you a member? Well, no. Well, we really don't. We don't serve you.
Right.
Not to be a jerk about it, but it's amazing how many people who are against welfare want corporate welfare.
Yeah.
And that's really what that is. And so it's like, well, I was talking to a guy on the phone. He calls me up and he was having an issue. He says, well, I've been doing this type of work for 20 years and I've never had a problem. He got into a little bit of legal challenges with a client. And I said, well, are you a NUCOA member? And he's like, well, no. And I said, well, why? Maybe you should have been. And this issue could have been dealt with a while ago in terms of some regulation and this sort of thing. And so I don't think I convinced him, but he wanted NUCOA to sort of solve this problem. Well, who are you? And so it didn't make any sense to me. So that's the other issue. There is a lobbying element to it where we have contributed, we have participated in certain types of ballot initiatives where we've sent money up to Maine for the bear controversy that was up there. We've sent money to Montana, my home state, when the Footloose Montana tried to get trap bans in the state, and these were situations that weren't directly related to wildlife control. You say, well, why was NUCOA giving money to fight the animal rights movement here? Well, because we saw that as the first step to regulating the tools that we need in our industry. Most of our wildlife control operators don't use footholds. But what we don't want is that we don't want tools eliminated that we may need to use in certain limited circumstances.
Sure.
So we supported those two events, and I think we were involved with some work that happened in Virginia because, as you know, I don't know if you know, Washington, D.C. did some crazy stuff about trapping in Washington, D.C. It's a bizarre place. So we were involved in lobbying for some of that and opposing that, and certainly not allowing, pushing Virginia not to push back against what was happening in D.C. So there's different legal issues that we've sometimes been able to lobby at the committee level to try to get some things nipped in the butt before they went to the legislature. I think we need to be doing more, but we've been focusing a whole lot on training right now, getting wildlife control operators behaving professionally and well, because there's still a lot of yahoos out there that we need to bring into the fold and say, look, there's a professional way of doing things, and we want to avoid big mistake. Because once the big mistake occurs, that's when legislation gets passed, bad legislation gets passed very rapidly. And we want to avoid that. And so we're doing it from the training side. And we're also hoping that as time goes on and we get more people trained, then they can see the need for appropriate regulation. Again, a lot of people in the industry they're libertarians. I don't want regulation. No, you do want regulation. You just want the right regulation.
Right.
It takes new regulation to get rid of bad regulation. Let me give you an illustration of this. In my home state of Massachusetts, they had the Ban Cruel Traps campaign in 1996, right? So it banned footholds, it banned snares, it banned cable restraints, banned mole traps, believe it or not. That's how it was interpreted. We lost all kinds of things. It banned traps that hadn't even been invented yet because of how it was written. That is bad regulation. In fact, it forced trappers to use tools that were more inhumane than the ones we were using in certain circumstances. Right. This is the hypocrisy of the animal rights protest industry, right? And notice what I call them. I don't call them animal rights. They're the animal rights protest industry. Why do I call them an industry? Because they're in the business of protesting. That's right. What they do. They're in a business. It's a business, folks. And unfortunately, I'm on one of my hobby horses, so I'm going to start preaching here right now. We have got to stop trappers from using the word live trap. It drives me nuts. You say, Stephen, why are you worried about this? Here's why. The person who controls the language controls the debate. So let me give an illustration. If I'm talking to a homeowner and I use the word live trap, what do they think? What's the first thing in your head? What do you think?
A cage.
Cage.
Right.
That's perfectly normal. Now, if I pull out a foothold, what do you think it is?
It's a foothold trap.
Oh. If you're a homeowner.
If you're a homeowner, then
if this trap is a live trap, what's this?
Right. That's a killer trap.
It's a kill trap.
Yep.
So what have we done? We've already lost the debate. We haven't even started yet. We already lost. Because we have fed into the mythology of our clients. We have actually trained our clients to believe a lie. So when Mr. Animal Rights protest industry comes along, ban cruel traps. We need to ban cruel traps. What do they think? Oh, we're going to keep these nice, humane traps. We're going to let those stay. By the way, they're not that humane. And we're going to get rid of these awful, mean, tooth-ridden foothold trap, leg hole traps, right? And then we wonder why we lost. I'm telling you, folks, trappers, unfortunately, a lot of you guys are going to hate me. It's fine. I'm hated already. The fact of the matter is a lot of trappers are their own worst enemy.
Absolutely.
Because they fail to understand how an urbanite thinks. And they refuse to learn how to talk to an urbanite so that the urbanite understands why we need these tools and why we need these devices. This is how I explain it to people in Massachusetts. I said, well, we need to stop this. I said, why are you wanting to punish people who pay the state to work for free? And they would be shocked at me. Well, what do you mean? I said, so we have a group of people in Massachusetts that used to trap beaver for free. And not only that, they paid the state for the privilege to work for free. So you want to punish them because clearly in Massachusetts, leftist Massachusetts, we want to punish those people who want to pay the state for the privilege to work for free. And they would stare at me because they realize how stupid it is to punish people who pay the state to work for free. I said, let me tell you something. You pass this law, which they did, by a 2-to-1 margin, I will charge $400 a beaver. And I did.
Hmm.
So what the citizens of Massachusetts wanted, because here's what they thought. They thought, well, I've been living here for 20 years. I've never had a beaver problem. So what's the big deal?
Right.
So our beaver population went from 21,000 in 3 years up to over 70 to, I think it was 65 to 70,000 in 3 years.
Wow.
It was awesome. Okay. But you see the difference of how we need to communicate? I'll give you another illustration where fur trappers failed miserably to take advantage of a beautiful marketing campaign that they could have had. Remember when Mrs. Obama, President Obama's wife, she said, "I don't wear fur." The first thing that the NTA, the FTA should have done, or even a state association, the first thing they should have done was they should have mailed a fur coat to the White House.
Right.
And they should have gotten a billboard in downtown New York City that said, "Fur, America's first industry," or an environmental, or something to point out how we're sorry, Mrs. Obama, that you don't support environmentally sound jobs.
Sure.
Now, how would that, you think the national media would have picked that up? Now, what would she have to say? Oh, I'm against environmentally friendly jobs?
Right.
Oh, how would that have gone over in the Obama administration, the administration that felt that they were God's gift for greening of America, right? Solyndra and everything. So why didn't they do it? Because they weren't thinking urbanite.
Right.
How are you going to have your message out there? It would have been they would have gotten more press. You wouldn't have been able to pay for that kind of press. You could have simply said, "Mr. Obama, we're gonna have you come out to one. We have a trapper on call right now. We'll have you come out and do some bobcat trapping with him out in the West. Everything taken care of. We will take care of you, and you'll be able to go on his trapping line and learn how to trap bobcat." He'll never show up.
Right.
Has to refuse it.
Yeah.
Right. Think about what that would be. We want to show you what this is in America, what it's like. That some of these people make part of their livelihood. They put food on the table because they're doing some trapping, Mr. Obama. Why do you hate us so much? See how you're putting the pressure on, right? So this is what I'm talking about, how we fail to communicate properly because we use bad language. Live trap. Babies. I don't trap babies. Do you trap babies? Babies are people.
Right.
And so people say, "Oh," so here's an illustration for those in your audience who think that, "Oh, well, there's Stephen going on one of his little tirades again." All right, let me explain it to you this way. Whatever your opinion is of abortion, I want you to think for a moment. Why is it that the media never calls the pro-life movement the pro-life movement? If you listen carefully, they always call it the anti-abortion movement.
Right.
Why do they do that? That's not how pro-lifers talk about themselves.
Right.
Why is that? Because the abortion lobby complained to the media and said, because they knew they were losing the debate on pro-life. How can you be anti-life?
Right.
Not pro-life, and you're not. Well, then what's that make you? Pro-death, right? Well, that doesn't market well, does it? So they were wise enough to realize that the person who controls the language controls the debate. So now it becomes anti-abortion, pro-choice, or anti-abortion, abortion rights. Or they don't talk about abortion, they'll talk about women's health or whatever the case may be. The point is that how you framing the argument matters in terms of how your message gets across to people. Because most people really don't care what we do. They don't care.
Right.
But if you ask them, do you want to stop cruel foothold traps from killing animals in nature? How do you think the average urbanite's going to vote?
Of course.
Of course
I do.
Why?
Right.
because it never occurs to them that the raccoon that needs to be killed is in their attic. I had a lady, I worked in her house, and she said, "Oh, well, I voted for question 1, but I thought that was for the trappers out in the woods." I said, "Did you read it? It didn't make exceptions." Right? So my point is, everybody, look, if we're serious about winning about this issue, we have got to do 2 things. 1, we've got to get serious about our message. And that's hard work, and I'm sorry, that's politics. Okay? Don't keep yelling about how science is everything. No, people don't care.
Right.
It's not about the facts. Okay? They don't care. We have got to get our message out there. The second thing is we have got to develop recruitment. Unfortunately, a lot of trappers are loners. They're hyper individualistic. They really don't like people.
Right.
And then they wonder why their industry is dying.
Yeah.
So I've experienced this personally. I have begged trappers. I said, "Look, I'm too busy in the wintertime because that's the time I'm in training, where I'm going out to producers and training. I am not interested in stealing your trap line. I have my own equipment. You can keep the fur. I don't care. I just want the experience." You would have thought I was asking them for their firstborn child. I continue to be puzzled to this day. And I'm someone who loves the fur industry, okay? But my love has gotten a little soft because of how I felt I was treated. And if I'm treated this way, can you imagine how people who are full-on urbanites, who hate trapping, how do you think they think of fur trapping? So this is where this industry has got to figure out what its goals are. And unfortunately, that message is not getting through. A lot of people think that, this is the way my granddaddy did it. And this is the way my father did it. And I'm sorry, it's a new world, folks, and it's not the same. And so part of our fear, to wrap it back into NUCOA, part of our fear is that when fur trappers are coming into the wildlife control field, they often don't understand they're in a different environment now.
Yep.
So yeah, that conibear on the ground may have been awesome for a raccoon out in the woods, but not under someone's deck, where there's a high chance that a cat may get into it first before the woodchuck or before the skunk or before something else.
Yeah.
And so just like, well, it's legal. Just because it's legal doesn't make it wise.
Right.
And so that's one of our passions, is to help people who are coming from the fur, because a lot of people in our industry have come from the fur side, to make that transition so that they take those skills, which are impressive, and make sure that they're softened enough for the suburban context, so that we don't have that big mistake.
Sure.
Now, the flip side also occurs. We have pest controllers who come in and who have no knowledge of trapping, and they think of raccoons like a mouse, so I don't have to check that trap.
Right.
So it's not just simply, don't think I'm just beating up on the fur trappers here. It's not true, because there's some things that come out of the pest control industry that are truly scary. It's like, whoa, this isn't a rat, folks. Okay, this is a raccoon. This is wildlife rather than a invasive species. This is a native animal. This is not a native animal. There's 2 different laws here. And sometimes that doesn't get translated well. So we have to make sure we work with both sides. So what I've learned is that most fur trappers have excellent skills when it comes to the wildlife side, but their business acumen needs to be developed.
Yep.
The pest controllers have great business acumen, but it's their wildlife skills that need to be developed.
Right.
And so NUCOA works both. And so we actually encourage people, if you're a fur trapper, get your pest control license.
Yeah.
You may never use it, and that's fine, but it's always good to have in your back pocket. A lot of guys, some guys who relied on pest control companies to do a lot of referral service for them, to refer a lot of their jobs. Sometimes those companies said, you know what, we're referring so much work, we're going to stop. We're going to start doing it ourselves. And sometimes people have been caught out where they had a couple of businesses that they were relying on for referrals, and they thought everything was fine, and all of a sudden it dried up like that.
Yeah.
You want to have that pest control license in your back pocket so that if you need to transition, you can, or you want to make sure that you don't over rely on referrals to the detriment of your own independence.
Sure.
That's some scary stuff there.
Yeah, definitely.